Good evening. I'm Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, and welcome to tonight's Kalamazoo City Commission meeting of Monday, December 14th, 2020. Tonight's meeting is a work session of the Kalamazoo City Commission to discuss the proposed 2021 budget. Tonight's meeting is also being streamed on the city's Facebook page, as well as the city's YouTube channel. And members of the public can access the city's draft budget by going to kalamazooCity.org/budgets. And also for tonight's meeting, you can listen on the meeting by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 923-1769-1240 when prompted. And you may also leave a public comment for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kalamazoo Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you very, very much, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. I appreciate that. So I want to officially call to order this special Zoom meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission, specifically to discuss the proposed budget, which came to us from administration for fiscal and calendar year 2021. So the first thing we need to do here is to call the roll. Please, Kirk Orlean.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here in the great city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Hess.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Knott.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Urban.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Mayor Anderson.
Here in Kalamazoo. Thank you, Clerk Bortling. So just a quick reminder, it's a simple agenda tonight, and we will be playing citizen comments after the presentation that comes to us from city staff. So that's when it will occur on the agenda. City Manager, any communications tonight?
None, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Nice to have you back. And our next item is discussion action items, and I will be turning it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and glad to be back and really excited to be discussing next year's budget as we look forward to putting 2020 in the rear view mirror. Looking forward to several key initiatives that we're going to lay out this evening. And as was said before, I know the mayor has said it and others that, our budget reflects our values and priorities. And I hope in the presentation tonight, you'll be able to see that as we go through all the good work that our departments and others are looking to complete next year. Also, we did hear from the community this past year, and certainly want to be responsive to several concerns that have been talked about. So what we heard is the need for better communication. So you'll be able to see that tonight, how that's going to be a big part of our operations going forward with the hiring of a new public information officer who actually began today. So, and then racial equity work. This was a challenging year in that area. And our director, Dorla Bonner, will be talking in depth about plans for next year relative to that work in diversity, equity, inclusion. And then public safety, how the community and the public safety department will be collaborating more, and there'll be more partnerships, and you'll be able to see that demonstrated in a discussion around that. Next slide, please. I do want to mention that you'll see little presentation or discussion this evening on our utility funds, water and sewer. We plan on having a work session in January to cover those funds. So we're going to focus mainly on the general fund and other special funds of the city this evening. So as far as highlights go, here are just some very top level highlights that will be laid out this evening in a little more detail. First of all, the FFE, Foundation for Excellence. Next year's budget, we call it a stable budget or status quo budget, but considering with COVID and the impact that that has had on municipal finances statewide and throughout the nation, we are very fortunate to have the Foundation for Excellence, which a component of it is to stabilize the city's budget. So we are pleased to announce that we will have no service reductions this year. In fact, you'll see actually some enhancements. So we're very pleased to be able to lay that out. And also the tax rate. Millage rate is proposed to remain at 12 mils for the general operating millage. So, and then in 2021, the Foundation for Excellence will surpass $120 million invested in Kalamazoo. So that's since 2017 and just a staggering number. But again, that supports the work of Imagine Kalamazoo and all of that. So we're very fortunate to have the Foundation for Excellence, and this will play out in tonight's presentation. We do have increased investment around for capital outlay. You'll see a lot of that in water and wastewater next month. So, but we do have some capital expenditures that will be discussed for roads and other infrastructure. Pleased to announce that our 5-year plan is a balanced fiscal plan, and that the fund balance proposed or projected will remain at or above our target of 15% of revenue. Mentioned some new positions in next year's budget. We've got 3 new positions: a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator to help support the work of Director Bonner. We have a community collaborator that has begun already, and that position will be part of public safety and will be discussed later. And then pleased to announce that there's an assistant elections manager to help out the clerk's office. That was a part-time position that's going to be upgraded to full-time. I mentioned a little bit about the PIO, and we're very pleased to have Ryan Bridges on board as our new public information officer. And we are also looking at public safety and how we can diversify a little bit the expenditures of that department and really carve out funding for social service interventions. And you'll be seeing that later in the discussion around public safety. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our CFO, Steve Asensi, and he's going to give an overview of the finances for next year's budget. Steve?
Good evening. Okay, if we can go to the next slide here. This slide highlights our total city budget this year of $213.9 million, just over 5% increase over last year. This includes 673 allocated positions, with 665 of those being full-time. Moving on to the next slide, kind of going into the details of each section of that, starting with our governmental funds. This includes our general fund, major and local streets, grant funds, and our capital improvement fund. You see only a small increase of 1.25% this year. And then moving to the next slide, taking a look at our enterprise funds, we do see a 10.5% increase in our enterprise funds, which are our water and wastewater utilities. And that increase is largely driven by the capital improvement plan of those funds. Moving on to the next slide, we'll get into those capital improvement plans a little bit deeper here. Just kind of as the city manager mentioned, we'll be working on the utility funds at our future commission work session. But I do want to go through some of the highlights. Working from left to right here, you see our water fund at about 37.4 million in planned capital improvements. This is the peak in the 5-year plan for this fund, and we expect this to normalize in the $15 to $20 million range going forward. The water fund receives funding for their capital improvements through bond funding and reserves, state drinking water revolving funds, and the FFE. Our wastewater fund is set to have an $11.3 million capital plan next year, a slight decrease from the prior year. This fund will continue to operate at about $10 to $12 million per year in capital plans. And this is funded through bond revenues and reserves. Stepping into the middle section of the slide here, we have our capital improvement or CIP fund. We're set to spend about 6.7 million out of this fund. This fund pays for park improvements, IT projects, new buildings and infrastructure improvements, and heavy equipment. And this is bond funded. On the next portion here, we have our general fund capital spend this year, just a little bit under $1 million. And this is cash funded capital improvements that are not able to be bonded for. This includes items such as IT equipment, non-leased vehicles, and other department equipment. And then on the right, we have our major and local streets. Major streets with a plan of 6.1 million next year, and local streets with a $1 million plan. These plans are funded through bonds, grants, and the jurisdictional transfer funding. They are also required to have a responsible debt service amount that can be covered by the revenues brought into those funds. Stepping to our next slide, we have the general fund revenue picture here. As the city manager mentioned, thanks to the FFE, we were able to keep our millage rate at 12 mils. A few highlights as far as our revenues go, we are seeing a continued decrease in our charges for services next year from one budget to the next of about 7%, and a decrease in our intergovernmental revenues, which is largely driven by our state shared revenue. We'll get into that here a little bit more in a moment, but those decreases are entirely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And while property tax values have not shown signs of decrease due to COVID-19, we must continue to be cautious as we move forward. We have yet to see how exactly COVID-19 will affect property tax values, particularly commercial and industrial, as we get into the long-term effects of what COVID-19 will bring. I would really like to take a moment here to really look at the FFE funding portions. As I kind of already mentioned, we were able to keep our millage at 12 mils, thanks to the $13 million provided by the FFE for the tax reduction. And as the city manager mentioned a little bit, getting into our budget stabilization, we are being provided once again $4.2 million for that amount. That is extremely important to us this year. We see a lot of other cities with local or local income or sales taxes that are seeing large decreases in their revenue streams, and thus having to make very hard decisions on how to cut their expenditures to match those new revenues. We again are very fortunate to be able to have that budget stabilization, have it be a steady and dependable stream of revenue that is allowing us to continue our programming going forward without any significant budget cuts. Moving forward, on this slide, as I mentioned, we have seen a decrease in our revenue sharing from the state. This year was a very unique year with COVID-19. The state made the decision to cut part of the August revenue sharing payment, which for us was about $550,000. They did, however, replace that with a grant for COVID-related expenditures of about $788,000 this year. So that was a one-time grant. But as we move forward, we continue to see the effects of COVID-19 on statewide sales taxes, and thus the lower amount of revenue sharing, where 2020 we were planning to get 9.5 million, which is less than, 2021 we're expecting to get 9.5 million, which is less than the 2020 amount, and about 200,000 to 300,000 less than we originally would have expected had everything remained normal. Continue to our next slide. We have our general fund expenditures by category. As you can see here, our largest category is personnel, as most of what we do is providing services to the community. Then and only a slight increase of our general fund expenditures of about 1% this year. Continuing on, we have this broken down a different way by department here. So you can kind of see how the city spends its money and how we allocate through the different departments. And then finally, we have our last slide. There we go. This slide highlights our 5-year plan for the general fund. Our fund balance target is 15%, or about 2 months of operational revenues. This is important to allow us the cash flow we need for grants and the seasonality of our revenue streams. We bring in a majority of our revenues in July through September from taxes. And you can see here where we're starting 2021 in a strong financial position, being over that target. And our 5-year plan is showing an intentional and responsible spend down of our excess reserves without needing to make significant budget reductions over the next 5 years. And with that, I believe the next slide, I'll turn it back over to City Manager here for any discussion.
Any questions or discussion, commissioners?
There we go. Thank you. I forgot to mention earlier that the way this, the format of this presentation this evening is we've got it divided into sections, and for each section, there's a discussion period afterwards or questions. So as we move forward, you'll see that. So are there any questions or any discussion around the financial information that was shared? Chris?
Commissioner Pradel, yeah.
Steve or Jim, I was just going to ask you, have you heard anything in terms of updates from discussions in Congress about any sort of support or funding towards local governments or states or whatnot, and the likelihood of that happening in 2021?
So what I've garnered is any stimulus package that would be adopted yet this year would not include support for local governments. What may be considered next year could include local government support. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and hopefully they will help support our finances and every other jurisdiction that's struggling right now. All right. Very good. So the next section, next slide. Oh, yep. So what we want to do is go through some highlights of projects that are anticipated in the upcoming fiscal year. And we're going to kind of tag team here between department directors and cover highlight or projects by goal area. So the IK 2025 goals, you'll see that listed. And then, so why don't we start on the next slide with shared prosperity. And I believe I'm turning this over to Director Kick.
Thank you so much, City Manager Ritzma. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. So we'll start out with shared prosperity and talk about our incentives policy. The incentives policy is intended to be a guiding document for developers, particularly those working with the brownfield seeking tax increment financing. And this document aligns with the city's strategic vision. The policy was first adopted at the very end of 2019 with our Brownfield Board. And this past year, with the coronavirus delays and pauses that we've had, has actually given us a chance to really dive deeper into that incentives policy. And we are looking to amend it with the board's input in 2021. Our goals are to be more responsive to the community when we're giving tax abatements through the brownfield, and to be sure that they're aligning with the city's goals. Affordable housing support has been a huge drive for community planning and economic development. This year, we will support once again what we call our Housing for All Affordable Housing Loan Program. This program provides gap funding for neighborhood housing and mixed-use development, both for small developers who've been receiving coaching through our Incremental Development Alliance partnership, as well as low-income housing tax credit projects. We hope that we will be able to support at least 2 low-income housing tax credit projects and 4 of our incremental development coached projects. Another specific project that we are assisting with is called Pathways Home. The Pathways Home is a housing partnership with the city, the Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services, and Open Doors. This program will help to move Kalamazoo residents from homelessness to home ownership. Our targets in 2021 include the building of 2 duplexes, 4 single-family homes, hoping to assist 8 families lease purchase new homes in our city. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. Oops. Uh-oh. A little technical.
Maybe as retro kick, you can just keep walking us through it here.
Just keep
Wait.
going.
Sure.
That sounds good. Thank you, Mayor. The next program that we're working on is called Clouded Title. This is Clearing Clouded Titles is an additional partnership of the city and the county treasurer that was developed out of the Tax Foreclosure Prevention Partnership. Clearing Title establishes clear home ownership for those who may inherit properties, as well as tax code entitlements. This is an important project because 10 families were able to be helped in the 2020 pilot year with an investment of $5,400, again from the FFE. And that investment of $5,400 assisted to create over $500,000 in wealth and market value for owners in core neighborhoods, particularly the North Side and Edison. An annual goal of 10 such cases has been set again for 2021. If we're able to go to the next slide. Tax foreclosure prevention, again, will be another goal in 2021. 109 families have kept their home to date. Annual targets are based on need, but a trend of about 30 to 50 families per year could be expected based on the 2 years of history so far to date. Many of those folks that we have been assisting are seniors or those who experienced financial strenuous emergencies. And we will continue to help those residents in our city. The next slide, please. Another program that we are working on is with residents who currently have fines or cannot make repairs within our code enforcement. We've been in touch with several residents and will continue to market and reach out for the program in 2021. These are community development block grant funded projects of less than $5,000 to income qualifying homeowners. We hope to work ourselves into a place where we can offer assistance before there are any fines issued. So right now we're working with those residents who currently have passed fines, and we want to be sure that we can help them with any projects that are needed. And we hope that soon in the future, we will be able to offer this as a proactive measure for residents who may not be able to afford repairs on their homes. We will continue doing 3 additional neighborhood plans in 2021. As you know, each neighborhood plan is adopted into the master plan and goals are incorporated into the Imagine Kalamazoo at Work. We're really excited to have many of our Foundation for Excellence initiatives assisting with the individual neighborhood plans. So as we talk about some of these projects, I'll let you know when they came from particular neighborhood plans. For example, the neighborhood beautification project is a pilot program for homeowners in the city of Kalamazoo. Many times when we were doing the neighborhood plans, they were like, well, you know, I don't income qualify for a particular CDBG community development block grant funding, or, you know, I make too much to get something done through Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services or other types of grants. And we wanted to be able to offer small grants for things like paint or power washing your house or flowers or beautification. And so this will be the first year that we are running this. We really learned about this program from Battle Creek. They've done it very, very successfully within their city, and we're really following their model. Next slide, please. Another project that we also, again, supporting neighborhood goals, are garden kits. These kits will provide materials, soil, seeds, plants, instructions, everything a resident needs to begin to grow fresh food at home. This project has been identified by multiple core neighborhoods, and it provides a really accessible and low-risk entry point for people to learn about at-home gardening. And it's a simple concept that helps to be able to build skills and confidence around growing your own food. And then lastly, we have site rehabilitation. So in the past, we've talked about site acquisition, and we worked with several neighborhood associations to purchase sites in neighborhoods as a critical part of our anti-gentrification strategy. And now we are going to put money towards the rehabilitation of those sites as well, allowing some grants that would be able to assist with goals of home ownership. And so in 2021, we are supporting 2 rehabs on the north side with the North Side Association for Community Development, as well as rehabbing 8 townhomes on Florence Street. Next slide, please. We have a new program this year through our Business Development Fund that will be able to assist for the build out of spaces for businesses. In the past, we've had great success with the facade program, but also heard from our business owners that they need assistance in rehabbing the interiors of the spaces. And so that's where we're directing funds this year. So in years past, they may have gotten new signage and done their facade. And then this year, we can start to help them with the interior spaces and rehabbing those as well. We are also working on the development and launch of an entrepreneur accelerator program that will allow participants who graduate from this program with $5,000 of grant and technical assistance. We're also working on pop-up retail. These are going to be actual physical small shed-like structures that have been used in other markets like Holland and Muskegon, Battle Creek, and Detroit, to be utilized for home-based entrepreneurs to have an extension of their business. And when these are placed near other thriving businesses, it's been shown to given these new or established value of these before COVID, and now it's more critical than ever that we create new markets for our existing businesses. Another extension of our investment program was researched and created by one of our K College interns this past summer during some of the neighborhood plan outreach. And this program is used to match local artists, fabricators, and small businesses in the neighborhood corridors to create unique projecting signs. And this promotes local artists and makers, as well as promoting the local businesses as well. And we are going to work this year to match those artists and businesses together. Next slide, please. Our sustainability strategy is probably one of the most exciting projects that's going to be coming towards you this in 2021, mostly because it's been worked on for a very long time and we've had lots of engagement around it. So we're excited to bring that to you by the first quarter. Staff will be evaluating the plan for staffing and funding needs to consider within the 2021 or 2022 budget. Sustainability is really viewed as a citywide priority. So this will be incorporated into all of our departments and across divisions. And we're really excited to work on that new project with you. Another part of sustainability that's going to be implemented next year are no-mow zones. These areas have been designated and sent to our mowing contractors and include areas in Emerald Park, Sherwood Park, Verburg Park, and Spring Valley Park. The mowing contractors estimating how much money will actually be saved by creating these no-mow zones, but we estimate it could be several $1,000s. We also will be creating signage to inform park users regarding the benefits of no-mow zones, such as the reduced carbon output, our fuel savings, and the creation and preservation of natural habitats. The areas that we're designating to be no-mow zones are not current activity spaces that are used by our residents. We will just mow pathways that used to just be lawn, basically, so that residents will be able to walk through and around those no-mow zones. Another department-specific sustainability issue is that the Parks and Rec Department is utilizing GPS technology to monitor their idling over time. By monitoring idling, we hope to positively impact fuel consumption, emissions, and unnecessary wear on vehicle engines as well. Another part of our tree inventory is the city-wide assessment and inventory of all of our existing trees in our current public right-of-way. It will inventory the trees based on location and species and how large the trees are. And this will help us better to assess our forestry needs in the future. And combined with that, we will be able to look at how many additional trees that we can plant. Our goal is 500 per year. We really hope to stay on track with that. We were able to successfully bid our first large-scale tree planting project in recent memory and look forward to more success in the years to come. We will always be looking for additional funds to apply for as well through numerous grants to support that endeavor. The next slide, please. Lastly, we've been working towards a pilot project for the last year to assist in data collection, planning, and education around utility costs. And we anticipate that this information will allow us to develop a more formal green affordable housing program to be able to comprehensively address energy efficiency when doing home improvement projects and our other programs. So we really hope that through this year's data collection that we will be able to bring you a more robust and a comprehensive home program. Additionally, we are going to do a pilot program for tire collection. Tires are not only a typical thing that happens a lot with dumping sites throughout the city, but they are really havens for mosquitoes and other horrible pests. And tires are not collected as part of bulk trash, and they are not taken by curb-lorn enforcement either, unless a special request is done. And so we really see the opportunity to assist with people trying to get rid of their tires. And so we're going to go ahead and request the funds to support a special collection this year and be working on a drop-off location that we will be coordinating sometime this summer. So be sure to look for more information on that. And lastly, the lead hazard mitigation grant that we received through the federal program at the Housing and Urban Development with Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services is to abate 72 homes over the period of 3 years. Unfortunately, this was our first year and we ran into trouble pretty quickly going home in March with COVID. However, we will able to do 3 of our 11 homes this year. And we really hope to be able to do twice as many in 2021. Our ultimate goal is 33 homes next year, but I will certainly keep you updated as to how many we are able to achieve with the limitations that we have. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Director Baker.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. I'll be talking mainly about some infrastructure projects as they relate to Connected City. We're going to continue our traffic calming efforts within the Northside neighborhood and studying areas north of Patterson in 2021. Work will continue on the downtown two-way street conversion projects where we have continued modeling and iterative approaches to rolling out designs to the community for continued engagement. Also in 2021, you'll see extensions of the KVRT as that work is coordinated with the Bank Street realignment and the Farmers Market project. There's also going to be pop-up bike lanes on Kalamazoo, on Washington Park, as we study some of those alternatives. Now that work is coordinated with the two-way street conversions, but within that study, a pop-up event will give us some continued ability to study, model those traffic effects real time with the ability for our citizens to try that out and to provide some additional comment towards whether they would like to see those improvements or not. Next slide, please. Focusing now on some infrastructure highlights within Safe Community, with the overall goal of increasing pavement quality, we are shifting investment towards earlier stages of street life cycle. Utilizing a chip seal, fog seal approach is going to enable that. Additional major street projects on Parkview, Portage, Miller, and Emerald will be more focused on our conventional reconstruction type work. Lead service replacements continue in East Side and in Eastwood. The blue cloud that you see there on the map highlights where our work will continue in 2021. In addition to that, we will be focusing on community engagement in 2020 for our next major lead project. Our next major large-scale lead project is going to be North Kalamazoo. There would be over 2,000 services within that single project. That work is focused to start in 2021, but with engagement and applications for funding that will occur in 2021. So the work is in 22, but that process starts in 2021. And with that, I will pass it off to Director Fletcher for the next slide.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. I'm going to talk about a few items related to our department, Parks and Recreation. We are very excited to say that we received over 60 applications for our Youth Advisory Council. That will probably be a tentative name because we are going to allow that group of youth to determine the official name. This group of young people will advise our department regarding programs, activities, and events, and we'll have 13 members. It's truly going to be their council as they will determine how they operate and what they want to focus on. Our youth team of Pete Arts, Chad Wendt, and Ashton Anthony will provide guidance and help this group be successful. We hope to continue to offer several youth development programs in 2021. Our plan is to offer our summer day camp program, Camp Kazoo, Super Rec, and All Things Possible. And right now we're going to use the 2020 guidelines for and adapt as necessary to the guidelines that will be in place come spring, summer. Not sure what those will be, but we'll work within those. And then obviously we're going to have safety as our priority while trying to serve as many kids as possible. The summer youth employment program will continue. That switched to a virtual format in 2020. It definitely presented some challenges, but I have to say that it was met with innovation, passion, and dedication to Kalamazoo youth and their career pathway development. Weekly, participants received virtual activities that fell into 5 different categories, including career exploration, employability skills, office hours, industry-focused group projects, and they were given a survey to make sure that the My City program was as close to the traditional experience as possible. The 2020 program served a total of 178 participants, 153 through the fully virtual Career 101 and Career 2.0 model, and another 25 through the Career Now occupational training program. Much like our programs, their program would likely be virtual unless it's deemed safe to offer as an in-person option. That'll all depend on whatever guideline or executive orders are out there. Digital, let's see, I'm not sure if I'm on the right side. Yep, still on the right side. Digital Access for All, as you probably know, is a partnership between the City Foundation for Excellence, Kalamazoo Public Schools, the Public Library, the Promise, and the Community Foundation. KPS, public school households have received Wi-Fi hotspots to create equitable distance learning during COVID. And to date, approximately 800 families have taken advantage of a Wi-Fi hotspot. The learning hubs have provided our youth with learning assistance during the pandemic. And the hubs have kept safety at the forefront while providing assistance for youth not attending in-person classes. Next slide, please. The farmers market is going to receive a lot of improvements. All the site work will be completed with new parking areas that will accommodate over 370 cars. New roofs will be added to the existing vendor sheds, and a new vendor shed will be constructed along the western edge of the market. A new restroom building that will double the number of restrooms and provide more storage. Bank Street will be realigned and include a segment of the KRVT that will be off-street, and that work is set to begin likely in April and will take approximately a year. We will be doing some improvements to MLK Junior Park, some new irrigation throughout the park and in the flower beds, new trees along the southern edge of the park to provide a buffer between the railroad tracks. Sidewalks will be replaced as needed along Rose Street. The cement along the north edge of the park will be removed. Many of those cement flags are heaving badly due to tree roots. Harkins Court will be closed to through traffic, which will eliminate some loitering and then large amounts of trash that are left behind. And then the marker near Rose Street, which is tilting a little bit, will also be reset. LaCrone Park will get its new splash pad that will be constructed next to the existing playground in the park. Placing it next to the existing playground will allow us to preserve green space on the west side of the park. Splash pad will be about double the size of the splash pad on Florence Street, and we'll have a number of seating options for parents, guardians, grandparents, and it'll also have a shaded area. That project will also start in the spring and will be complete sometime in July. And lastly, the restoration of Portage Creek at Millen Park. Work on the dam is set to begin in the spring. Dam removal will allow us to then get in and do some restoration of the creek bank. The creek bank has expanded over the years, causing a lot of soft, mucky areas along the southern edge of the park. I do want to say that we've done all that planning in conjunction with the Michigan DNR and the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and we are working to secure all the permits that are required. That work will be completed sometime later in the fall, likely in October. Thank you, and I'll turn it over now to Deputy City Manager Patsy Moore.
Patsy, we can't, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Good evening. Good governance, in the good governance area, there is much good work that's continuing to go on in this goal area, but we wanted to highlight 3 of those for you this evening. The first one being our 311. We are continuing to enhance and perfect that 311 customer service experience. We're now able to begin to streamline some processes based on the data that we're getting from the 311. And we're also poised in 2021 to begin to measure performance based on national benchmarks to ensure that individuals who are calling into the 311 continue to receive a very high level of customer service. So we will continue to enhance our 311 in 2021. The next one we're extremely proud of, as many of you will recall, that we've been working for years to reduce our liability in our other post-employment benefits trust fund. And we have achieved that milestone now, thanks to a lot of good work by Steve Basinci and his team, Shelley Dusick and the HR staff and some of our vendors. But most especially, we want to thank our retirees for helping us get over the hump. We are now able to transition all of our employees to a custom City of Kalamazoo Medicare Advantage plan that will continue to provide them with the same level of benefit that they are now enjoying, and in the same time, reduced our liability by giving us a $53 million savings, actuarial savings in that OPEB trust fund. So again, we are very excited about this. This will begin in 2021, where we will see that reduction in actuarial savings. Finally, want to talk about expanded election services. As most of you know, Clerk Boylan has not adjusted his staff to address the additional requirements that are now in place, such as same-day voter registration and no reason absentee ballot. He has observed over the year and is now ready to expand that staff by adding the position that we referenced earlier in the presentation. It's currently a part-time position, but we are proposing to create a full-time position to make sure that these voter services are attended to. Also, the city clerk will embark upon a feasibility study for voter access. He will engage the community, look for better ways to enhance voter access, put a plan together based on input that he gets, and put a plan together in order to move forward with the implementation of enhanced voter access. Those are the 3 areas we want to highlight in our good governance goal. So thank you this evening.
Thanks, Patsy. And I just want to take a moment and recognize Patsy. This will be her last budgeting cycle with the city, as she will be retiring in 2021. And Patsy, you've done incredible work for the city, especially in the budget area. And we're going to sorely miss you. And obviously, there'll be more time to talk about your retirement later. But I just wanted, in this setting, recognize this as your last budget cycle.
Thank you very much.
So any questions or discussion around the work in these areas? Want to really recognize and thank the department directors for this information. And we're, as you can see, excited with a lot of work going on in 2021. And we certainly look forward to a good year.
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Eric.
You can go ahead, Commissioner Urban.
Well, I just wanted to ask what is meant by the $17 million of actuarial savings. Is that a one-time thing? Is that spread over the actuarial period of all the people who are in the retirement program? What does that really mean in practical terms?
So the way it works, Commissioner Urban, is in the post-entire retirement employee benefit fund, trust fund, there are what are called actuarially accrued liabilities. And so basically think of that as the life of the fund and what liabilities, i.e. paying out health insurance claims for retirees over the life of the fund with the members that are covered by that. What we've done is been able to shave off $53 million of liability from that fund. And what that does is ultimately feed back into the longevity of the fund, being able to sustain the fund. If you recall, back in the days of the OPEB task force, that was a big discussion or concern, was kind of managing our liabilities. We bonded for 75% of the liability, and we're paying an actuarial accrued contribution, an ARC. So with that and managing in these savings of around 53 million, we're able to continue projecting sustainability in the retirement trust fund.
Okay, thanks.
My first question is towards Director Baker. The two-way street project, do you guys have any timeline on that project? I guess I'm not even sure if I have any, how to word it beyond that. Do you have a timeline on that project?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Most of the work in 21 and 22 is going to be focused on getting the design iterations laid out and then ultimately detailed design. The work would happen after 2025. And there's fundamentally two street projects that would have to occur before we could take on such a project like this two-way conversion. And that would be the Harrison Street extension, which would connect Pitcher Portage over to East Michigan directly. The other street project would be the Ransom Corridor extension, which would move traffic in a wider configuration. I don't know at this time what that exactly would look like, but perhaps a three-lane cross section from Ransom at Pitcher, where it currently is, all the way down to Westnedge. And those two would be critically important for us to then do the work and, have essentially, Michigan Ave shut down for the conversion or Kalamazoo Ave shut down for the conversion. So we're still a ways out yet, but there's a lot of little steps in this that have to occur year by year by year before we get to that point.
And James, a big part of that too will be identifying funding through federal grants and other sources during this time as well.
That's correct. We haven't really got into the dollars and cents of how big these projects are, but the two-way conversion project is several orders of magnitude larger than the city's entire streets budget. So it's not something that we would be able to complete or do with the current funding sources that we have available to us. This would be a big, big lift, and we would need a lot of support for that at state and federal or major infrastructure resources.
Thank you, Director Baker. And my apologies if I look like I'm looking off into space.
We all are, yeah.
I got both of my monitors going at the same time. The other, before I even jump off of that subject, I probably won't be around for too many budget sessions also. Congratulations, Director Moore, City Manager Moore.
Thank you.
But I say that to say, so to my colleagues, those two-way streets, I think, are essential to our community. And I won't be around to make sure that a lot of those efforts move forward. So I ask that you keep that in mind and continue to move that job forward. The other question I had, and I'm not sure who this would even be directed to, I know that we had a lot of partnerships this year with KPS, Kalamazoo Public Schools, dealing with a lot of their needs and taking into consideration the things that have developed through the pandemic. Do we suspect any of those initiatives to roll over into 2021? I know that some of which might not be needed, we may not be as needed, but I guess that's my overall question.
So, Commissioner Cunningham, the one program that was highlighted in Parks and Rec was the learning hubs. So that's a partnership that will be continued in 2021 as long as we're stuck in the COVID pandemic situation. You recall the Youth Mobility Fund, that is a partnership too between public schools, library, and the city. That one is on hold right now as all of their Metro Transit is not charging a fee or fare for riding the bus. So once that is changed and where they're charging a fare, that program will resume. And Laura, are there any other ones to highlight?
Well, the other one that I was going to add was a digital access for all. So looking at helping to provide the internet connectivity to go along with virtual learning. So we do have $100,000 allocated to continue the ongoing support for digital access for all through our Foundation for Excellence budget.
And then the other inquiry, I guess the last thing is just more of a statement as it pertains to the Portage Creek Dam. I hate to see it go. And trust me, it's something that I kept my eye on for the last year, but it is definitely a necessity. So to the community at large, I vetted it 10 times over in my mind on, what this might look like, how I might feel, might even change the landscape. But thank you to all of city staff for all the work that you guys have done with that project. I know a lot of those decisions aren't easy. And so once again, I appreciate you.
Thanks. Mr. Hess.
A few things. Director Kick, thank you so much for the sustainability updates. I know that Environmental Concerns Committee and Kalamazoo Climate Control Coalition will be interested to see all that. And I really hope that we can keep sustainability at the forefront of our thinking throughout city planning, that we're aware of things like the tree canopy and the air quality and the water quality of our city, and the walkability and so on. Also, you mentioned that we had a K College intern. Being a K College retiree, I just want to say that to anyone who's listening, that the internships available in the city are great opportunities for people who want a quality internship with a quality organization. And then again, just thank you, Rebecca, for your work on that. Sean Fletcher, thank you for the MLK Park update. I know that Karen Chadwick and her group of folks that try and keep up MLK Park have been asking for these things for years. And so thank you so much for that. And also for updating and enhancing and renovating the statue of MLK in that park. As a symbol of our community, that was really helpful and heartfelt in such a tough year. So thanks for that. And Deputy City Manager Moore, thank you for all you do. Your leadership will be missed.
Commissioner Prado?
Sure. Just had couple questions. So Director Baker, I was just going to ask you, I try to ask questions that I don't know the answer to, so hopefully in the future I don't have to ask questions, but also if I wonder, I wonder if others might wonder the same. So one of the questions I had for you is, can you explain a little bit what chip and fog seal is for those who don't know, for the street repairs.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great question. I'm sure many others have that. Burdick Street from Stockbridge to Cork was given this surface treatment several years ago. And this was our first street to perform a pilot or test case application on to see if this, pavement restoration detail could hold up in an urban environment. Could it be applied in an urban environment that would be satisfactory to street users? And could the wearing surface hold up and be something that, all users of a street would, put up with in an urban environment? And we've had a lot of success with Burdick Street. We recognize that, sort of as our model going forward as we look to roll this out to local streets here in Kalamazoo. And essentially what it is a very small aggregate or a small rock diameter that is placed on top of a spray of emulsion. And what that does is that holds that and bonds that to the street surface. The aggregate provides a wearing course, and the emulsion provides a waterproofing layer for the street to preserve the asphalt underneath it. We then come on top of that and spray another layer of emulsion on top of that to give it a nice, sharp, black street appearance that we recognize as a positive attribute or a positive aesthetic for a new street. And most of these applications, nearly all these applications, will be local streets, which we predominantly do not stripe. But as we transition and start to do this on major streets, that'll also give us an opportunity to lay down some very nice new striping that would be, very conspicuous from what was there before.
Second question, I appreciate that. That's helpful. The other question I had as well is when you were giving your presentation, on the slide, it talked about the pop-up bike lanes, and it listed Westnedge Park, but it also had Kalamazoo Avenue on there as well. So is Kalamazoo Avenue also one of the options that'll be a pop-up bike lane, and then an area that you'll be monitoring and whatnot to see success of that? I just wanted to double check on that in case anyone asks.
Yeah, so we are studying Kalamazoo Avenue. There already is a protected bike lane. It's a portion of the KVRT that extends from Edwards to Porter Street on Kalamazoo Avenue right now. So we're studying the ability to stretch that out. To the west, we'd like to look at taking that all the way down to Douglas. On the east, we'd like to look at taking that all the way to Harrison. Now, lane configurations and traffic movements might not give us the ability to put a pop-up lane up there because the geometry and structures of those lanes might interfere with that. So I think there's a little bit more work needed on planning and engineering's end before we can commit to a pop-up on Kalamazoo Avenue. We can, at this point, commit to pop-ups on Westnedge Park because there's, essentially what engineers refer to as ghost lanes there already that, with a bunch of cones set up and some minor traffic controls, we can get there pretty easily. There could be some limitations, structural limitations or geometry limitations that would prevent that ease of a pop-up on Kalamazoo or the full length. And maybe we can find some success in doing a shorter run of a pop-up on Kalamazoo in a smaller section.
Okay. The other thing as well, just wanted to mention this. It's been a while since I had driven up Oakland Drive today, but man, that is just a spectacular project. I mean, just across the board, from everything from the walkability improvements, to the bike lane expansion, to the pedestrian island. I mean, it is like a just picture study of like a perfect street adjustment. And then just thinking about how, it was done with thoughtfulness about utilities underneath to improve everything all in one swoop. But I just wanted to give a shout out to you as well as on that. And I know Cork Street was a major undertaking as well this year. But along those lines, in terms of just walkability initiatives and pedestrian safety type initiatives for this coming year, I know, we've started to see around the community a lot more of the pedestrian crosswalk, those barricade things in the center of the street. I don't know the exact name of those, but the speed monitoring, I think they're like solar powered ones that are along the streets. People have noticed to pop up as well. But anything in the forecast for this year in terms that you want to really kind of recognize in terms of that front of walkability, pedestrian safety, bike safety, those sort of initiatives, expanding upon, what people have been seeing this year?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. A lot of the work that we do, and this is probably respective of all departments, touches a lot of different funding sources. So we're pulling from operational dollars within Act 51. We're pulling from Foundation for Excellence dollars. We're also pulling from local agency project, or essentially our CATS project dollars, and those are federal sources which may break down into safety improvements or other categories as well. So that being said, we a lot of the presentation tonight was focused on some of the major highlights, just because there's so much to try to get out there. We have just received a safety improvement grant from Federal Highway. There'll be safety improvements focused at well over 30 intersections within Kalamazoo. Some of that work includes audible signals for pedestrians that will count down times and notify residents audibly whether or not it's safe to cross. And Kalamazoo is unique in that we have a high percentage of our population with some visual impairment, and that is really key for the safety of our intersections. We're also continuing to get more locations out there with the bollards and in-street signs. We use operational dollars for that, and that really is an education campaign that's focused on getting the word out about Kalamazoo's changes in pedestrian safety and the crosswalk ordinance. And that's what really makes driving in Kalamazoo unique then from, say, Portage, where they do not have that pedestrian crosswalk law that we do, in terms of the vehicle has to stop for the pedestrian. And so it's really important for us to have those locations out there to communicate to drivers. Staff has also been partnering for a number of years now. A lot of great work by planning staff and by engineering staff coming together for a safe routes to school plan. There's been a lot of success and traction in that, and a lot of that work will start to get funded and built out this year. Another major support in terms of funding is the sidewalk improvements program that we partner with the FFE on, and those are continuing dollars that are invested year after year after year, with a focus of increasing walkability and pedestrian safety. Now, the major takeaway is sidewalks, but we're also looking at improving crossings and intersections with those dollars as well. So there is a lot of work in a lot of different areas focused on pedestrian safety, pedestrian awareness, traffic calming, safe routes to school, intersection safety, and intersection improvements. And most of that you'll see in the line item budgets, and then also some of our work partnered programs with, say, FFE, Federal Highway, CATS, those natures.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's great to hear about the 30 intersection grant that we'll be utilizing as well. That's great to hear. And then I did have 2 questions for Director Kick as well, if you don't mind. One of them was just in terms of the tree inventory that you referenced taking place. Do you know, is that citywide this year, or is it just specific to a few neighborhoods to start with this coming year? And then the other thing I was just going to ask as well is if you wouldn't mind just sharing, if you happen to know, in terms of the neighborhood plans that plan to finish this year as well. You mentioned there were 3 of them this year.
So I'll be more equipped to answer the neighborhood plans question, even though I presented on the tree inventory. It really is in Director Baker's house. So it was just the way we chose to do the presentation this year. But so for the neighborhood plans this year, we are working on, Millwood is still pursuing theirs. West Nitch Hill is in the planning process. And then there's a really neat combination that may happen with West Main Hill, Douglas, and Stewart. And so it kind of feels like 5 are sort of in play right now. But our goal is to get 3 of those over the finish line for the year.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry
you're
about the tree
welcome,
question.
Yeah, and I'll let Director Baker talk to you about the tree inventory.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. The goal is to complete the tree inventory over the entire city. Now that is very large. That this work may very well span into 2022, but it's really important. Trees, essentially are assets, and we've got robust records and assets and programs that we maintain that tell us where every water service are located, where the water mains and fire hydrants are and everything else. And our tree inventory is not quite as accurate. Now, we do have in Lou City, we do have kind of the backbone for a tree inventory, but we lack some of that critical information in terms of the tree health, the tree status, and some of the long-term planning that we'd like to look at in terms of areas that we can plant and what are good areas for future tree plantings to occur. Curb lawn, which essentially is that space between the sidewalk and the curb in the street, curb lawn widths vary all throughout the city. And so, you might have a curb lawn in front of your house that could take a oak or a silver maple or something like that. But there's areas in the community where we can't plant those large trees in those small curb lawns. So that's something that we have to take into consideration as well. I'll also speak a little bit about the new tree plantings. We're also, confronted with these constraints when we go out to plant new trees. It's that, every neighborhood, every street has a different curb lawn layout and also overhead utilities. It doesn't make sense for us to plant a new oak tree under some power lines where that oak tree is not going to be allowed to thrive and grow to the best of its ability. So with this tree inventory, we're trying to take all those layers of information and get that all in kind of a one-stop management resource, so that as we continue to plant trees in the community, that we can best fit the right tree species for the right location, and then we can increase our abilities to plant mass plantings year by year. We completed 150 tree plantings in 2020, and that was our largest single year tree planting to date. You heard Director Kick talk about getting towards 500 plantings per year. That's our goal. We have a pretty strong goal of wanting to increase tree canopy, and that's something that we'd really like to work towards. And it might take us a while to get towards that goal. Again, this information and knowing where we can roll that out, where we can get those trees planted is critical to achieving that goal, so that we can execute in mass large contracts in a large bunch of trees to help support and increase that overall goal of increasing tree canopy.
Awesome. Thank you. And DCM Moore, just wanted to echo my colleagues. Congratulations. Very well deserved. Thank you for your service. Thank you, guys.
Anything else?
Seeing no one else here, Jim, I'll jump in. So, we have more presentation coming up here. We're going to be talking about our important diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We're going to be talking about our Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, and we're also going to be talking about gun violence here. So that's still coming on our agenda. But we are in this discussion section about a lot of the work that the city does. So I guess there's just a few comments I don't want to wait for the end on. I'll go ahead and make those now. And just a couple items in no particular order. First of all, I do want to recognize the chip and fog we did do on Burdick Street. Commissioner Pradel, that was actually an award-winning undertaking. That we did that in collaboration, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Baker, but we did that, I believe, as a collaborative process with the Kalamazoo County Road Commission, and we were recognized for that. I mean, this kind of approach is something there's been on rural roads for a while, and I think it was just also a test of whether it could work in an urban environment and whether that could extend the life of pavement. And those seem to be the case. So anyway, that was a great collaborative project that we did some years ago on that one. I wanted to recognize that. And then something else that, I guess is boring when you think about it, the idea of saving $53 million of actuarial liability in our OPEB fund. And that's something we kind of brush over, and we look, for other nice things, whether it's escape improvements or helping folks paint or plant flowers. But this is a phenomenal piece of work. And I want to give a bunch of credit here to DCM Moore and to everyone who has worked on this. This is a phenomenal piece of work coming together, which has taken thousands of hours. So I had the honor of getting to serve on our OPEB liability evaluation team when we did that work together, when Manager Ritzman and I co-chaired that effort. But that was a huge, outstanding, unfunded liability that the city of Kalamazoo owed to its retirees by contract, which means everybody in the city of Kalamazoo, owed that obligation. And we took some risks with that, with deciding after that long process to fund that through sales of bonds. That was, not a slam dunk idea. We certainly had to be careful about that. But one of the steps we were going to take when we were involved in that OPEB funding through bond sales is reducing those liabilities long term. And that is being accomplished. That is huge. I appreciate everyone's work on that. And it does end up being behind the scenes work. But I'll tell you what, if it doesn't get done, we know, because things don't happen in the budget because we're having to increase our, our annual contribution to that fund, which means other things don't get funded. So thank you so much for everyone who worked. I know Stephen Zensi as well, everyone who worked on that. That's huge. Another thing I just don't want to forget, because we're talking about a $214 million budget, and we're looking at some highlights. We can't do it any other way, but every single day there is regular work which we're not noticing here, whether it's replacing water meters, whether it's taking care of parks, whether it's picking up leaves, all the work that 673 people do at the city every single day. And we're not highlighting every one of those activities, but maybe that is not something, well, it's brand new, we're doing it this year. There's something extra we're doing. This is the ongoing work of having a functioning city. So I want to recognize everybody in all departments that's doing that everyday work and doing it competently, because that is what we expect of each other, and that is what individuals who live in the city expect and desire. So thank you so much for that. And this is an old story, and I guess maybe I'm an old guy, so I'm going to keep telling this old story, but I just want to remind us that for the first many, many years that I was on the city commission, these budget sessions were a bit of a dirge, to tell you the truth. And we would be talking about, what are we not going to do next year? Okay, neighborhood liaison officers, that's gone. That's an extra. Fixing any sidewalks, forget about it. We're putting zero in our sidewalk repair budget, and on and on and on. And those were challenging sessions. And now in this situation, having an opportunity to have a budget with more capital investments, and I'll tell you about, we can talk about the pluses and minuses of this, but we had serious discussion about a city income tax. Well, that is a tax that when people have less income, like has occurred over the last 9 months, city income tax revenues go down. And we are now in a lucky situation where we have, been able to establish this very creative foundation for excellence that fills that gap. And we are talking about, once again, more sidewalks, innovative collaborations with KPS. Those are the kinds of things that would have been gone in years past, for sure. So here we are getting to talk about those things and keeping our city work going. So just don't want to miss that, that when you have these budget presentations, that how different it is and how important that is. So one of the things I've always said about city work is that, the city is not the story. We don't want the city to be the story. That the city should be a canvas upon which people paint the stories of their lives in the city. And the city should be quietly going about the business of providing a humane and civilized place for people to live together. And that is what we attempt to do in these ongoing budget presentations. And we're talking about 21 now. So it gives us hope going forward. Always challenges to deal with, no doubt about that. But our job, is to be the best we can here, providing our city services so that everybody can benefit. So I really, really appreciate this ongoing work for the city. And we've got more to do here tonight, more to talk about, but I just wanted to insert that at this point. So I will turn it back over to you, Manager Ritzma, to take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we're going to dive into our Strength Through Diversity community goal. And the discussion around this is going to be in our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion department. So you'll recall in this year's budget that was developed last year at this time, we did budget for a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion director. And in February, Dorla Bonner was named that director. And I can just say that Dorla has really stepped into the role. And given the situation of COVID and all the other, racial equity issues that were raised this year and continue to be part of our work going forward. I'm just so thankful for Dorla that she's been able to really get that learning curve real sharp, and I'm going to turn it over to her to talk about next year's plans.
Thank you, City Manager Ritzma. It has been an interesting year, a very long, short year. But I want to give you a little background before we go into next year. A lot happened this year to set the stage for 21. Early in the year, right after I was promoted to this position, the city manager's team and Chief Thomas and HR Director Dusek, we attended Erase 2.5-day equity training, anti-racism training. And as a part of that session, we developed a wonderful plan for 2020. And because of the things the city manager mentioned, COVID and the social unrest, we were not able to really get into that plan, but that didn't mean there was no equity work going on. We have worked really hard. I think I'm grateful that I've had some help this year, but just to highlight a few things that we were part of developing the social equity plan for the recreational marijuana ordinance. We worked with Director Kick and Attorney Robinson and Vice Mayor to get the Chapter 18 and 18A ordinances done. And we have a seated Civil Rights Board that has been trained in fair housing law and civil rights law already. We started up the year with a race training, an introduction to systemic racism, and trained all of our city leadership, directors, deputies, commissioners, executive staff, mid-level managers, and to date, we have over almost 130 staff trained that have gone through a one-day systemic racism training. We work with the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeals Board to hire a consultant to provide independent review of the KDVS activities this summer. We've been supporting our staff with listening sessions through our Employee Assistance Program and other organizations to help during stressful times. We've been having listening sessions by SHARE, the Society for Healing Art and Race and Equity, to allow a safe space for staff to talk about the racial and issues that we are all dealing with. Our goal was just to make sure everybody was okay, and we did that with the support of HR Director Shelley Doucette. So we have been doing a lot of stuff that set the stage for what we're going to be doing in 21. So I'm so excited that the commission and the leadership feel so strongly about this position and this department that they are giving me some help. We will have a coordinator, a full-time coordinator to help with programming. I'm honored that that DEI is in the budget like it is. That is our commitment to this work. I must say that it is great to just be in the budget for real, for real. So that's a big thing. We're continually working with the consultant hired to perform the independent review. They will be working directly with me and CSPRAP, where we're just kind of supporting them, not working with me because this is independent, but we will be helping them set up listening sessions, connecting them to folks. They will be reporting to CSPRAP and myself on a monthly basis. Another huge thing that we're doing in 21 is a diversity, equity, and included audit, assessment, an internal assessment. We delayed making a real plan for our work because we don't know where we are. And I'm strongly committed to making sure the work is transformational and we don't just do things. So we're going to have a consultant to help us do the assessment. And then we will use the results of those assessments to develop the city's first diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. I'm really excited because I spent some time with Assistant Chief Green today from Public Safety, and we're going to make sure that we have one city plan, not a city plan and KDPS plan. There's only one of us. So we're going to work together to do this plan and have different sections for different departments, but we will have one city plan, so we will all be going the same way together for diversity. Next slide. We are going to expand our training for city staff and we'll offer anti-racism training with a goal of 50% participation. We're going to hold internal workshops on specific issues like unconscious bias and code switching. We're going to be working with, I will be working with Assistant Chief Green to make sure that public safety and our training align, so we will all have the same language, the same definitions, and the same goals. We're going to develop an internal task force, and this is a leadership team that will help design and implement our initiatives. We need people on the inside to champion this work and encourage broad participation. The demographic tracking, that's another exciting thing. I learned this year that the only department that really collects demographic data is HUD, our federal grant, CDBG and Block Grant. I also learned that this is not unusual because that's not the way cities operate. But in order for us to determine if our work is really equitable, inclusive, and diverse, we need to have some hard data. And so we're going to spend this first year just learning and experimenting on tracking data. It's not to determine where our programs are. It is really for us to learn how to track data, what is the quality of the data, and this will give us a baseline for where we are. And then next year, we will do more about expanding and analyzing. So the goal is by 2023, we will have a system in place that is strong enough that we will be able to actually determine if our programs are diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and what we need to do to transition. But this first year, success is going to be collecting data, and that is going to be a huge success. I think that's all I have. Those are my 2 slides. Thank you all.
Any discussion or questions here for Dorla or others?
Well, I just have to tell you, from the moment you were named into this position, you have embraced it and you have done it with grace, perhaps not ease, but grace, and have given grace to those of us who are participating along with you. I appreciate your work, and I applaud your patience with the process. But I'm really, really happy to see another position coming your way. So thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess.
And I just want to give a little bit of what the benefit of Dorla's position is for my leadership team, and having Dorla at the table, around decisions that are being made either within the organization or out in the community. The perspective she brings and counsel she gives is just incredible. Something that we didn't have before. And I can tell you that Dorla has been very forthright in her views, and I appreciate that. And I think overall our decisions are better. And we got a lot of work to do yet in this area, and but Dorla is the right person in the role right now.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Jim, I just want to make one quick comment on that also, is that although it's obvious that these kinds of discussions, are well overdue, I can say that I'm very happy that we also have the wherewithal to do this focus that we need to do. And I'm glad to see the plan, Director Bonner. I appreciate that very much. I think this falls into the category of what Maya Angelou said, when you know better, do better. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. But this is one of those things that now we're really heading into our first full year of this work, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you again so much. Got thrown in the deep end on this one and came back to the surface and hung on. I think maybe you had your doubts there for a second or two. Maybe you still do. I don't know, but
no comment. No.
but you got come back to the top there, and you've got some work going on. So I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. As we move into this last section on public safety, I just want to start by reading a statement from Chief Coakley, as was indicated late last week. He unfortunately has the COVID virus and is recovering at home, and unfortunately not ready for or being on a presentation like this evening. So I'm going to read a statement from him. So every I that's listed that I say is from him, not myself. So this is the words of Chief Coakley. Good evening, community. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for the well wishes and prayers extended to me and my family. I am recovering from COVID-19, but I want you to know I am excited to return to work to make a difference in our community. My vision for the city of Kalamazoo at KDPS is our top priority is keeping our residents, visitors, and businesses safe. Our goal is to ensure Kalamazoo remains a safe city and a community we can all enjoy. Over the past several years, we have built a solid foundation and track record for providing high-quality services to help our residents in their time of need, as well as keep our community safe. And my mission in this role as chief is to build on those successes and take our department to the next level. For starters, when our community thinks of KDPS, I want them to think of servant leaders who are there to help keep them safe and help them in times of need. I like to describe our team at KDPS as community collaboration. And that starts with building relationships, real relationships with our community. I am committed to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of our communications with our community and the media. KDPS will provide clear, accurate, and regular communications so we can keep the public, our community partners, and the media updated and informed. In fact, today, our new public information officer and community collaborator are both working and will aid in this process. I wholeheartedly believe that adding these two positions will go a long way toward improving transparency, legitimacy, and community trust. This is parallel to the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 initiative, which aims to increase engagement with all of our community stakeholders, from residents to community groups to businesses and developers and government. As we envision the future of our city, it is critical we have all hands on deck and we are all on the same page. I believe that we will have the same goal, which is creating a better city for those who are living, working, and raising a family, running a business, or visiting Kalamazoo. That is why we are using data to inform our decision-making and help ensure we are operating proactively and strategically. The bottom line is this: in order to achieve our goal, it is imperative that we work together, listen to, and love one another. So with those words of Chief Coakley, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Victor Green, who is going to talk about some of the work being planned for next year in KDPS.
Thank you, City Manager, to the Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners and staff. Before I begin, I'm new to this position, new to this commission, but although not new to Kalamazoo and public safety, I was here. I took a hiatus or a sabbatical for 15 years, and I'm back in this position. So I'm honored to be here as Assistant Chief to Office of Professional Standards, Community Relations, and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So as the Chief's vision, keep our community safe, create a better city, strengthen relations, improve communications, we've mapped out what we think is a wonderful and robust plan for 2021. So next slide, please. So as you mentioned earlier several times, we are excited that we hired a brand new and created a brand new position called Community Collaborator. Latanya Turner, we grabbed her from the private sector and brought her over. She's very familiar with community relations in the city of Kalamazoo. But her main goal is how do we strengthen relationships in the community, but more importantly, how do we have real and meaningful relationships with KDPS and the community. So her goal is going to be the liaison. She's going to be looking at programming. We're going to look at how do we make sure that public safety is on the same page with the city and also on the same page as we do outreach in the community. So we're very excited to have Latanya Turner on our team. As also mentioned earlier, a brand new position that Ryan Bridges just started now, a public information officer. Today was his first day. I saw him leaving about an hour ago. So he's absolutely committed, but he's going to be communicating with the community more effectively, not only working with public safety, but with the city, but also making sure that we at public safety is effectively getting our word out and doing it in the form of transparency. We got a new coordination that we're looking at through public safety and also through the city called the Social Service Coordination or Coordinator, we could say, exploring opportunities. How do we deepen the relationship as we're talking about re-engineering and rethinking public safety, coordination between law enforcement, schools, and social services, and not just a traditional law enforcement approach, but how do we create a new vision and new re-engineering of public safety when we do law enforcement. And our youth bureau, and as we deal with at-risk youth, I'm gonna shortly and later on this presentation, Assistant Chief Boyson will go in a lot more detail of how we've collaborated and what our vision may be dealing with the youth bureau. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to the meat and the potatoes of it, the Office of Professional Standards, we revamped it and reorganized it. More or less of a community affairs, Office of Professional Standards, and also diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we talk about those areas of professional standards, We're looking at how do we improve our investigations? How do we make sure we're transparent in the community? Legitimacy, how do we build trust? More of the procedural justice that we're looking at as a department. We're looking at ways to improve our communication and dialogue to ensure our community has a voice. I am extremely excited to be working and our division to be working with Ms. Bonner and her work that she's doing over in diversity, equity, and inclusion with the city. We want to make sure that we have one voice and yet instill that we can be very effective in not only in our training, but with our clear intentions of doing diversity, equity, inclusion throughout the department. And we also, with the Office of Professional Standards dealing with the internal affairs aspect of it, we've, for the first time ever, we have increased our staffing to deal with the concerns. So we have a Captain Diaz, and we have also Inspector Gills that deals with professional standards. When we talk about enhancing training and officers, in 2021, a couple of areas that we're going to focus on as a department and also parallel with the city and their training, dealing with procedural justice. So when we talk about procedural justice, transparency, legitimacy, trust, respect within the department and the community, diversity. The other big areas that we're talking about is de-escalation training, not throughout the whole department, and implicit or unconscious bias training and cultural awareness. Many of you may know that the state of Michigan has made a requirement that specifically all police department law enforcement officers go into, by 2022, have accomplished many of these trainings. I'm letting you know that public safety is well ahead of that training that's going to occur in the requirements for 2022. So we're working with the training division, also with the city of Kalamazoo, with Mrs. Bonner. The other thing that we're looking at is how do we continue to emphasize our hiring and diversity of local candidates. Diversity in hiring falls under the professional standards. So we're looking at reimagining ways to enhance and recruiting and hire base for the national base. Now, I've only been here, this is my second Monday at the job, but my team has already, Kirby, which told me, and they were really excited about before COVID, public safety did this wonderful thing that we went out into the community, each neighborhood, or we call it each zone, and we specifically started hiring and recruiting in those neighborhoods. So we bought the big red truck, the engineering, police, PSOs, community policing officers, and we talked one-on-one with the community about why don't you look at public safety as a future and as a career. We also are very excited. I got a chance to meet the Citizens Public Safety Review Board and Appeals Board and how they're a part of the hiring process. We got a chance to meet with Chairman Payne and the rest of the committee and how they're sitting with the hiring process. So when we go through the hiring, that they can have a voice also when we're looking at future PSOs. And next slide, please. Well, as we go to the next slide, one of the things in my last slide before I turned over to our Chief Boyson, some of the community outreach programs that we're looking at is our homeless outreach team. We're looking at how does public safety effectively and do even a more better job, or what I would just like to say, redouble our efforts in that, working with the ISK, Integrated Service of Kalamazoo. We also have the program called Pastors on Patrol. I think many of you are familiar with POP program, one of the few that's in the country to my knowledge, where pastors go on patrol and learn more about the community, and the police officers, PSOs, learn more about the community through the pastors. We have a wonderful Explorer program that's been around for years, Explorer Post 265, where we take young adults from the age of 14 and 21 who's interested in law enforcement. They participate in the Explorer program, and we teach them all about public safety, that hopefully one day, as we had ceremonies today, as we just sworn in a new PSO academy, that one day they can also be sworn in as PSOs here and serving the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. And finally, for those who have not participated in what is our Citizens Academy, once we get to the post-COVID status, we are looking forward that you participate in our Citizens Academy, and it happens yearly. It's a 2-day intense program, but it teaches everything about public safety. You learn about patrolling, you learn about detective bureau, everything about it. So we encourage anyone who's interested in participating with the Public Safety Department and Citizens Academy. And after that, next slide, I would turn this over to my colleague, Assistant Chief Dave Boyson.
Can I interject here real quick?
Sure, Jim.
It would be just like Chief Coakley being in one of these squares and wanting to speak. He did text me and reminded me of some work that he's being undertaken with the Kalamazoo Public Schools on creating that youth to law enforcement pipeline, and working directly with the superintendent and working on learning opportunities and trying to create that pipeline to law enforcement from our school system. So some exciting work there. So sorry to interrupt. I will turn it over to Assistant Chief Boyson.
All right, thank you, City Manager, Chief Green, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and staff. And I'm going to continue on our community outreach programs, and just to continue on the theme that Chief Green spoke about and Chief Coakley mentioned in his statement. The theme is collaboration. We know that public safety can't solve problems in the community by ourselves, and we need to work with the community, and they need to work with us in order to move the city forward. So these things I'm talking about all really are talking about that collaborative style of policing that we do now. The community policing unit is our hub for our community outreach programs, and they offer direct interaction with residents and business owners to solve problems and address quality of life issues. Really, it's about building relationships and trust. And every officer in our department is a community policing officer. However, with over 110,000 calls for service a year, a lot of times our patrol officers don't have time to dedicate to that problem solving. So we have a dedicated unit that can dedicate time to problem solving and building relationships, being at those neighborhood meetings, and being that point of contact for the neighborhood residents to public safety. So they have a name they know that they can call. They provide them with their phone numbers so they can go direct if they have an issue as just that point person. The next thing I want to talk about is bridging opportunities. And I'm very proud of this program. This is a youth initiative that, as far as I know, is a unique one in the country that we started in 2017 was our first year that we did this. And it came to us from the residents of Kalamazoo. The neighborhoods said, we need to do something about a huge increase that we had in 2016 in our youth crime. So we came up with bridging opportunities, and that focuses on 14, 15, and 16-year-olds that are on probation, that have had multiple contacts with police, those that we know are at risk and that were slipping through the cracks. Because the way we did it before 2017 was public safety was doing our thing, the courts were doing their thing, probation was doing their thing, community members were doing their thing, and the families were trying to do their thing, but nobody was working together. And bridging opportunity brings all of those people to the table to make sure that these youth are not slipping through the cracks. And one of the things that was exciting about it is we partnered with Youth Opportunities Unlimited and the My City program. A lot of times these youth would not have been a part of this program, but they've made exceptions for our bridging youth to be part of this. So those youth can get experience, paid experience, work experience, and every Friday they do field trips to, and this is a summer program, June, July, and August. They do summer field trips to every Friday to different communities, businesses, educational institutions, just to get a broader sense of the outside world that they can be part of. We also expanded, recognizing a lot of these youth have trauma and substance abuse issues. We partnered with Prevention Works and community healing centers as part of this team, and our community-based partnerships in this since the beginning of this in 2017 has been the Northside Association for Community Development that has been the Northside location. In the last 2 years, we've utilized the Boys and Girls Club on Lake Street as the community-based location for the South Side. We've tried to do a bridging light in 2020 due to COVID. It really was very challenging and not quite as effective because we couldn't do the in-person intensive contacts that these youth need. But the partners are still committed to doing it, and we're looking forward to hopefully 2021 getting this back to where it was in 2019, because it was very effective in reducing our youth involved crime and giving these youth an opportunity. The next collaborative approach that we've started, and we just implemented that in early 2020, was our high-risk domestic violence team. Another area where we found that people were slipping through the cracks would be our high-risk domestic violence victims. And before, again, public safety would make an arrest or maybe write a case against someone for domestic violence, and it would go to the prosecutor's office, and we were kind of done with it at that point. And then the prosecutor's office did their thing, victims assistance did their thing, and then the YWCA did theirs. But now we all work together in partnership and communicate with one another. So if we do make an arrest for domestic violence or write a case against someone that's termed or deemed high risk, we make sure that that victim follows up with prosecution. If they don't, we contact the Victims Assistance Unit or the victims case workers from the YWCA, and we will actually go to the house and follow up with that victim just to make sure that they have the resources they need and they know how to move forward and help them navigate the system, because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the system and just don't follow through. We make sure they have the help they need, and by doing that, we've seen really a good decrease in our serious cases of domestic violence, because that was an issue for us in 2019. The next collaborative approach we do is our crime reduction team. This is our second year of our crime reduction team, and that was another gap that we've identified in the organization. One of the things we do at public safety with law enforcement now is we're very laser focused on the most serious risks to the community as far as violent offenders or property crimes. And we have weekly crime reduction meetings, which I'll talk about in a minute, where we'd identify these law enforcement priorities, but we really didn't have the dedicated staff to make sure we had time to address them. And this crime reduction team is a sergeant and 2 officers, and we make sure that they are addressing the issues that need to be addressed in our neighborhoods. And finally, like Chief Green talked about the Youth Bureau, we are looking to house all of our youth programs under one unit within public safety. We have the school resource officer at Lloyd Norris. We have the Explore program that Chief Green talked about. We have Bridging Opportunities. We have the Police Athletic League and other outreach programs that we can house under one, because we really need to focus more on our youth because we know that they are our next generation coming up, and we need to do things to address those so it can break the cycle of a lot of times these youth and their families are involved in this cycle that we can help them break out of and go on the right path. Next slide. And finally, I want to talk about group violence intervention. I know it's been a tough summer for gun violence in our community and really in many urban communities across the country. We have implemented the group violence intervention model several years ago. Actually, this is a community-led initiative. And actually in 2011, some of our community partners, Isaac was the main one, Interfaith Strategies for Advocacy and Action Community, came to us, public safety in the city, and saying, hey, there's something, you should be able to do something better to help reduce violence. And we've looked at this program that's a national best practice that we would like you to look at. And Isaac has been a key partner with us in this strategy ever since. We began implementing parts of this strategy in 2013. By 2016, we were fully implemented, and we are continuing to learn every year and change the way we do things and strengthen our partnerships in the GVI. And I'll talk about what group violence intervention is. And really, it's a partnership, an equal partnership between social services, street outreach, and law enforcement, all working together to address group-involved gun violence. We know that a very small number of group-involved individuals drive the majority of our gun violence. And so each partner in this has a specific role, but we work as equal partners. Street outreach, our community members, and they're our community moral voice to say that shooting and killing people is wrong. We love you, but we hate the violence, and we stand with our partners to stop it in our community. So they're a key part of this. The next part is social services. Urban Alliance is our key main social service partner in the GVI, and that is, so if someone is at risk and they need services, we refer them to our social service partner who makes sure they get plugged into the right services, and with the agreement that if we refer you as a GVI participant, you get top of the list for services, so we don't let you down, and we make sure you get the help you need. And finally, law enforcement, we offer that swift, certain and legitimate consequences should you choose to ignore the outreach and continue to pick up a gun and commit acts of violence. We know there are some individuals that we need to protect the community from, but we're very strategic about it and very focused on only addressing the most dangerous individuals. The other ones, we use our GBI partners, our outreach, to try to intervene and break that cycle of violence before it continues. And I will just tell you that 2020 has been a challenging year because of COVID, because of civil unrest. We weren't able to implement many parts of this strategy in the spring, late spring and early summer, and you've seen the effects of that. Since August, we've gotten the strategy back up and running. Our partners are engaged, our law enforcement teams engaged, our social service teams are now engaged, and you're starting to see those partnerships pay off again like they did in 2017, 18, and 19. With the law enforcement, again, it's very focused. We're not doing the shotgun approach to trying to reduce crime. We're being very strategic on our enforcement. And if we have to do a lot of enforcement, we're doing GBI the wrong way. It's really more focused on the outreach and collaboration. But there are some people that we need to address through law enforcement. In order to make us more effective at that, we do weekly crime reduction meetings where all Division of Public Safety and our law enforcement partners meet, and we identify and prioritize our enforcement efforts for the week. So it's not random and people aren't doing their own thing. This is top down, where we decide on what needs to be addressed, and the teams go out there and address those in a very strategic way. In order to help us do that, we have added 3 crime analysts last year, and they're dedicated analysts to help us identify patterns and make sure that we are using our resources the most efficient way to address whether it could be violent crime, it could be property crime, whatever it might be. And then the last thing, like I talked about, is that crime reduction team, where we have dedicated staff that is ready to react and address those concerns in the community. And we know that by just addressing a couple of those more violent individuals, we can calm the streets down and really, and that's where our outreach part is more effective once we get the streets calmed down. And so just by addressing a couple of those high priority individuals can do a lot to calm the situation down. And that is next slide. And that's all I have. I will turn it over to the city manager for discussion.
Thanks, ACs Green and Boyson. So this will cover the information that was just shared by both of the assistant chiefs. Next, after this, will be more of a discussion built off from last week's city commission meeting specifically around gun violence. So are there any questions or discussion around what was presented in regards to public safety? Now I know what you go through, Mayor, with regards to trying to identify if anyone wants to speak. So I'm not seeing anything right now or anyone. Oh, Commissioner Prado.
Yeah, I'm just going to welcome Assistant Chief Green to the team as well. I'm sure this is a whirlwind, just with 2 weeks under your belt, but welcome to the team. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Commissioner Urban.
Well, I was glad to hear that the group violence initiative and the other prevention initiatives, those things have been restarted, and already you can detect some correlation with reduced level of gun violence in the last few weeks. That's very encouraging that you can make that correlation. I hope it's not coincidental. I don't believe it is, but there's always some skeptics out there. I just am really glad that you can report this. So at this early date, that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. So next, as I mentioned, we're going to dive into more of a discussion around gun violence, and I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb for a facilitated discussion around this. DCM Lamb?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Just to refresh where we last left our viewers, last Monday commission meeting, you all approved the use of $100,000 from the City Commission Initiative line item, specifically to support gun violence reduction efforts in the 4 categories you see up on the screen: community mobilization, cohesion, community healing, housing rehabilitation, and increased security systems. Certainly over the course of the discussion, it was made very clear how much of a priority it is for all of you to address gun violence in our community. Certainly, we also felt a very strong sense of urgency, but a desire that we get this right. Since our conversation last Monday, I have spent some time talking with our city attorney, with Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, Community Plan and Economic Development, Management Services, really trying to gather details on program development and developing some preliminary implementation timelines for you all. The thought is to throw some details and timeline your way, and then certainly to engage in discussion, to get your feedback, to get your questions, to see where we go from here. Next slide, please. So we heard loud and clear a desire for tracking our progress. What does success look like? Before you, we've got a table that our Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo coordinator, Kevin Ford, put together, and identifying some of the outcomes that certainly staff is hoping to see, our community is hoping to see with regard to block club pilots. We are looking at ways to build leadership, to build advocacy capacity. How do we look at building trust, individuals, community networks, both on their block, but with community partners? How do we increase knowledge around trauma-informed supports and services? Increasing feelings of safety, making sure that people are feeling safe in their neighborhoods, as well as opportunities to really inform residents about what's happening in the city and how to get involved, and to educate them about their rights as residents in our city. Next slide. One of the things I want to highlight, and certainly as you see that laundry list of outcomes, is to acknowledge that although there is certainly belief that if you can bring blocks together, you have a good way to intervene and try to discourage gun violence from happening, really the scope extends much beyond that. We want to make sure that we're really looking at building that connectivity neighbor to neighbor. And there's so many good things that can come of that, let alone looking at partnerships amongst each other and partnerships with the city. To get started, the thought is, as our Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo coordinator has been really in deep discussions about block club pilots over the course of this year, to look at 5 blocks where there's been some interest in looking at starting at block clubs. The thought would be to look at identifying captains and then going deep within the blocks to see who's interested in joining part of this effort. In addition to having some preliminary conversations with community, certainly Kevin's been very busy putting together a really sort of a starter kit that kind of goes from start to finish on how a block captain begins to receive training and then be able to get engaged residents to really grow the group, if you will, to get into the work. Has also spent some time thinking through what a registration process can look like. So the conversations have been unfolding over the course of the year. This certainly is an opportunity to bring the block clubs into the spotlight a little bit and to really move on it with the work, a lot of the work and the groundwork being done, I should say. In terms of a tentative timeline, the thought would be to really spend the first part of the year making sure that we understand who's interested in participating, really kind of getting that locked in, starting to have some orientations with block captains, and then really looking at throughout the year, having events and training to try to build capacity, to try to build trainings. As you solve that list of indicators, we're really going to look at needing to create some baseline understanding of where things are at. So as we are tracking our progress, we can compare it to something. So we could see some of that baseline established getting into the middle of the year. And then I think well before we get to the end of the year, you really have to reflect on what we've learned from the pilot. How do we begin to understand ways we can expand? We know, I was just talking to a neighbor today in Edison, we know that there is significant interest in having block clubs throughout the city. I think the idea is, do we look at how do we become successful on small scale so we can look at what it would take to actually do it justice. As I was explaining to a neighbor today, in the interim, we still want to be partners with our residents. If there's groups that are interested in pulling together, let's see how we can help them while we are formally trying to support this pilot in the 5 blocks that I've mentioned. Next slide. In terms of community healing, we spent a little bit of time last Monday just thinking about what that might look like in terms of identifying partners. Suggestions I got in terms of talking with our management services staff and our purchasing staff is we could really issue a request for quotes where we would be able to detail what we see as being critical partner selection criteria. This would allow us to look to see what are the required criteria, and then how do we begin to understand the way that organizations are established and how they could partner with us. Certainly from last week, I heard a couple of things come up, and I look for you all to kind of add to the list here, hearing the importance of availability, the sense that we need to have people available right as traumatic incidents are happening, or the importance of cultural competency and having a diverse counselor pool to represent our Black and Brown community, represent our whole community. And also this idea of really looking at assisting with a full range of ages and understanding that we have different types of trauma that may be happening that people are experiencing. So with this process, you could look to establish your criteria, put out a request for quotes, see what comes in, evaluate against that criteria, look to identify your partner or partners, perhaps it might be a carousel, and then the point of making sure we're understanding what success looks like. We could track things like response time. We could look at surveys in terms of people that have experienced the services, what their experiences have been, and then also looking at outcomes, to what extent that people who have benefited from the services are really being folded into other processes. Next slide, please. On the housing rehabilitation front, we gathered from public safety, looking at their records, over 70 homes have been damaged by gunfire this year. Certainly that number just kind of tells the story itself of what we're grappling with here and what kind of needs we're seeing out in the community. In terms of where we go from here, I think steps would really involve us looking to do outreach to individuals who've had their homes damaged, to try to get a sense of whether there's interest, what the needs might be, to look at how we can begin to understand what the scope of the repairs are needed, and the best way to approach that work. If we're looking at a substantial number of homes, there might be some benefit of us kind of combining work together, but a lot of our desire to figure out the path is going to really depend, again, on that initial interest. Some conversations that I've had with public safety, I think there's an opportunity to look at folding into some of the outreach work that's happening, the GBI outreach workers, as they are in communication, in partnership with some of the families of victims. Can we look at having them kind of help with this outreach piece to really gauge that interest and need? From that, I think we can then figure out, with existing programs like Rebecca mentioned, Director Kicks mentioned this evening, repair programs, how might we fold this in with the hope that we would be able to get to work fairly short order after we understand the need. One thing I should clarify, I got guidance from City Attorney Robinson that general fund dollars are not going to be able to be deployed for housing rehab. There's a limitation in using public funds for benefiting private individuals. So I think we've got a model within community plan and economic development, the program framework. We're going to need to look at some other source of funding to the repair themselves. I think we have some flexibility to draw from. So first step would be understanding the need, identifying the resources, and then rolling out the program. Next slide. Lastly, in terms of increased security systems, also in conversation with City Attorney Robinson, and he can certainly chime in here where he'd like to. Again, looking at ways in which we can assist residents in purchasing security systems. The thought is for us to demonstrate a public purpose, we would look to have an agreement that would really establish how the security system could benefit towards a public purpose. Where that could look like is if a resident had a security system and there was a crime that occurred on the block, you could envision an agreement that would stipulate, in the instance of a crime happening, public safety would request footage and we'd look for cooperation. I want to be very clear in this instance that you have public safety requesting footage. There's not a mechanism where public safety would have access to this footage without going through individuals. So we're aware, as we've had conversations about ring cameras or security systems, there are a lot of questions. There might be some concerns about how these operate. The thought is if we can focus on the block club pilot and begin to have conversations with residents about security systems, we have a chance of gathering what those questions are. We're listening to those concerns, thinking about ways in which we can mitigate those concerns, gauge that interest, and again, give us a sense of how we roll this out with that information in hand. We recognize that there are some tools out there. There's some apps out there that allow people to have access real time to crime information or events that are happening with or without security systems. There could be a whole educational campaign of how people can arm themselves with information about what's happening real time And then we could also engage in conversations around security systems at the same time. With that, that's kind of I realize I throw a lot of information to you. Wanted to just give you a sense of sprinkling throughout the 4 items of what kind of information that we've gleaned over the last week with a lot of different conversations, a lot of different levels, and really would like to hear from you all in terms of questions you have, comments you have, or additional direction for us. Thank you.
Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that number again, 70. The trauma that's behind a home being shot up. I don't even think sometimes I put it in perspective to think about coming home and you see a bullet hole in your wall and how the trauma just touches you again. And the crazy part about it is I'm pretty confident that, although that's the number that our officers were able to detect, that's not the number, the total number. I know for a fact, Woodward Elementary, I was there when a bullet flew by me and hit Woodward Elementary School. So, these type of initiatives are needed. These type of partnerships with the community are needed. And I don't know that number is just, that weighs heavy.
Mayor?
DCM Lamb, I want to say, first of all, thank you very much. This just came to us for a discussion at our last public city commission meeting. And some of these suggestions had come out of conversations that had occurred for a few of us that had kind of focused on response to gun violence here. And I think it's very helpful that you have taken it and put it into a framework here. And I think that makes it much more viable looking forward and less theoretical, I guess. So I really appreciate that work. And I know that, still all questions are answered, but this gives us a way to begin, to answer some of those questions and to move forward, which is, I think, what we wanted is to be able to move forward. So I appreciate that very much. I don't know if anyone else has any additional discussion about this topic. I see Commissioner Urban has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, well, I'm just really impressed with how thorough you are being and staying in the pretty much in the information gathering mode and in the pilot scale, actually engaging with the community that's willing to form the first block club or first several, and kind of feeling our way through this. And if to the extent that we're engaging face to face with the people who are actually doing, I'm with something. No, we don't know. Is to
Commissioner Urban, we are losing most of what you're saying at this point.
Works out.
Oh, that's one of the side effects of Zoom, I think.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in what Commissioner Urban has to say because usually it's wise and we have the benefit of his years and experience. However, my question, DCM Lamb, is A, thank you for doing this amazing work in a week's time. But B, we did vote a certain dollar amount, and I'm wondering if you're getting a sense as you're going through this where those dollars will be spent, and if I know it's not going to be broken down equally among the 4 initiatives, but where are you getting a sense that the most resources are needed?
I don't think I've got a good answer for you right now on that. I think certainly what was suggested was a preliminary framework, dollars clearly divided by 4. What I would see in terms of certainly lessons learned in terms of our ability to use resources to directly support individuals, that the housing rehab funds as we envisioned will not be used in that same way. So I think the question becomes kind of holding those in sort of a limbo period. What does that look like? Certainly what I heard loud and clear from this group is a desire to continue to have active real-time discussions. And so what I would see is as we have details fleshed out, we would be able to bring updates back to you at a business meeting. And I think in terms of rule of thumb, looking at any significant or even sort of a 10% change, kind of bring that back and make sure that we're on the same page in terms of where additional resources might be brought to bear. Something that comes to mind, and I will admit I have a very strong passion for block clubs and spent much of my career in local government doing neighborhood organizing. That is a scope that could certainly expand to include smaller scale projects as people come together. The ability that as you've got a group coming together, do you have a small neighborhood cleanup? Do you bring some crews in to do some small work? I could see that being a place where certainly you could add additional elements that we might not have envisioned on the front end. Likewise, I think on the trauma supports, you could envision perhaps a larger contract that we're looking at. I want to be mindful when we're still in that sort of experimental pilot place, that we really want to be able to understand what the options are before we jump too quickly to kind of finalizing numbers. So a short way of saying, I don't have more detailed information. The commitment I have to you all is that we continue to learn together and that we bring information back so you're all comfortable in the direction that we're heading within this initiative that you've taken on.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, I just wanted to take the time to thank you for the work. And I know last week at our commission meeting, I expressed a great deal of frustration, but what I didn't do is express how I'll say the word grateful I am that in trying to address gun violence, the conversation could be very different. And I'm just very grateful that with this body, we're not having to argue about getting at the root causes. And so I am very appreciative that although, you know, we may be further away than I would like, that we're actually, you know, getting to the root. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I want to thank our fellow commissioners and thank city staff for leaning into that and just remind community at large and letting everyone know that the bullets don't stop. They haven't stopped. I'm trying to think of a day that I haven't heard gunshots, and you might not hear about it on the news. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's still happening. And so I just want community to be mindful of that. Just because you're not hearing it on the news, there are community members right here that are still having to hear those gunshots regularly. So thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Praedel?
Yeah, you know, I think we brought this up at the last commission meeting, but you know, just if there's any opportunities as the final examination on the budget, or you know, as we approach FFE dollars in the future, you know, I just really hope we can maybe lean a little harder into the approaches outlined, or you know, other gun violence intervention strategies, because it seems pretty across the board with this commission that, you know, whether it's an issue that is just a priority that we collectively want to focus on, like affordable housing, or if it's an issue that's thrust upon you because of the times or the circumstances like gun violence, it just seems like we should really do our best to just really try to drill into that issue and get serious about it. And so I guess my hope is that as we, you know, look at the budget and continue to look at future years' budget and monitor the gun violence situation in our community, that you know, certainly our budget and the priorities in that budget reflect that.
Sure. Anything else? All right. Well, this concludes the presentation part and discussion of the 2021 budget. While they did not present this evening. I just want to acknowledge our appointees, Clerk Borling, City Attorney Robinson, and Internal Auditor Vedetich. Their work is incredible, and it's very integral to everything that you saw tonight. They are working integrally with us on those in those areas, and I just wanted to thank them for being partners in all of this, and we look forward to continuing to do the good work together. So just wanted to acknowledge them. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Risman. I want to extend my thanks to you. You are instrumental in helping create a team that can work together and do this good work. So thank you so much, and it's really great to have you back. So just a couple quick questions for me, just back your way, Manager Risman, that this is a special opportunity for the budget to be presented. Obviously, we're not acting on it tonight, but other steps will be setting a budget hearing, and so there's more opportunity. And then by charter, we are required to approve our budget before the end of January. So could you just talk a little bit about those steps now and what's your plans for that going forward?
Sure. So next Monday evening on the agenda will be a resolution to set the public hearing for the budget, and that will be held on the first meeting in January. And I'm gonna ask DCM Moore or our CFO Vicenzi, are we planning on having the adoption of the budget that evening, or are we going to have it at the next meeting, the second meeting in January?
I'll step in.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
The plan is to have it adopted at the second meeting in January.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Manager Risman. So just to be clear, the hearing is not at our very next meeting, which would be the 21st, correct?
Right.
But the hearing, we will be setting the hearing at our meeting on the 21st, calling that up for the first meeting in January. That's when our official hearing is on the budget, right, DCM Moore, and then voting at our second meeting in January. So that's the next steps that occur in the budget approval process.
Correct.
All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for your work. I appreciate that so very much. At this time on our agenda is the opportunity for public comments, and that's managed by Deputy City Manager Chamberlain at this point. And do we have any public comments?
We do, sir. We do have a couple public comments, and we'll go ahead and present those now.
Yes, my name is April Potgieser, and I reside in Kalamazoo County. And as you figure out your budget for 2021, I ask you to put more importance on improving the care that which is given to Riverside Cemetery. You need to take back the care of the cemetery, not contracting it out. Meaning Riverside Cemetery has been grossly neglected in the last 15 years. 8 years of that, my dad has been buried there. It has been a very problematic 8 years. The first spring after my dad had been buried, I came upon my dad's grave to remove the Christmas wreath off his grave site and found his headstone dragged 6 to 8 feet off the foundation. The headstone was eventually replaced, and there have been several incidences since then of repairable damage due to the lawn care companies that didn't care to be careful nor respectful of my dad's headstone, as well as the rest of the headstones in the cemetery. When you bury a loved one and pay for a headstone, you shouldn't have to worry about your loved one's headstone being damaged. There is a lot of history buried in Riverside. It is a long and it is long overdue that it is shown the respect it deserves. It is a beautiful cemetery. It needs major tree work done in addition to good lawn care, and you need to allocate your funds in a manner that can solely serve the cemetery maintenance needs. You also need a committee devoted strictly to addressing the care of this Riverside Cemetery. I have taken a tour of the cemetery about 3 times, and it is very sad what has been seen that has been neglected. I know we are in challenging times, but you need to get this situation resolved in 2021 because I am tired of being stressed out, pleading with the cemetery office and getting nowhere. The lowest bid is not always the best bid, and it is time to pick the ball back up that you dropped 15 years ago and take accountability. Take a drive, look around Riverside Cemetery for yourself and see the neglect. If you can spend money on updating Bronson Park, etc., you can afford to do your own lawn care, tree maintenance for Riverside Cemetery. If dead trees came down on large numbers of headstones, who pays for that then? I thank you for your time, and I hope you really see the value in addressing this issue once and for all. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Yes, my name is Richard Stewart. I reside at 828 Portage Street in the Southtown neighborhood. Recently, in attendance to the online meeting for the Zoning Board of Appeals, the commissioners recognized that our neighborhood has been unable to file its neighborhood plan, the Southtown neighborhood plan, as well as other neighborhoods, including Arcadia was mentioned. So I'm bringing to your attention that we continue to try to file a neighborhood plan to be included in the 2025 master plan, but city staff continues to refuse to accept our plan. Our plan includes the protection of our natural features that are currently under the target of a predatory developer that intends to develop the parcel that is now a natural feature and they want to put a 77 car paved parking lot over what's now a natural feature, and we want to get our neighborhood plan filed. It appears it's being drug on to protect that development. I would appreciate any of the commissioners who would help Southtown neighborhood file its neighborhood plan as the 23rd neighborhood. There are 22 existing neighborhoods, and address why city staff is stopping several neighborhoods from filing their plan. Thank you.
Mayor, that was the last call.
Thank you very much, DCM Chamberlain, and I want to thank individuals that took time to call in tonight and express their feelings. I appreciate that. Now is the time on the agenda for commissioner comments. So I will roll through that here. Commissioner Urban? All set. I think that's what that wave means. Commissioner Cunningham?
Again, thank you to city staff for all the work that you do. I just wanted to do a quick follow-up and also welcome Chief Green to one of the most amazing departments in the state of Michigan. I think you would be an amazing asset. I know that we had an opportunity to speak prior to today, and so hopefully I'm not disclosing too much information, but thank you for coming back to our community and signing up to serve. I think you will be a great addition to the team.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Knott?
I'm all set tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradel?
Yeah, just wanted to start off by first off wishing my partner Erin a happy birthday tonight. I apologize that I am on tonight, but I'm not. I don't apologize because this is one of the greatest responsibilities we have is to consider and vote on the budget. But I wanted to wish my wife a very happy birthday. Second thing I wanted to mention as well is wanted to just thank city staff as well for just all their hard work. I remember thinking about this last year And I know how many late evenings you are on here with these meetings, and we know that that comes at an expense to you and your family time and rest. And so we appreciate all the preparation work and time you spend with us to make all this possible. Just wanted to thank a couple items as well in the budget. One of them being is a full-time position for an elections assistant. I think this is going to be an incredible asset to the community in furthering voter engagement activities and making sure that we are continue to be one of the best and finest in the state, if not the country. Wanted to just echo this again, but just the gun violence component. I had the opportunity today to be sitting next to my son while he was in his kindergarten class virtually, and they had a segment on empathy. And they were trying to describe to kindergartners about the skill set of empathy and trying to see yourself in another person's shoes and walk in their shoes and experience what life would be like. And for any of us, and I know we're an empathetic bunch and care deeply about this community and our neighbors, no matter what neighborhood that you call home. But if you were a mother who was laying on top of your son who was bleeding to death, certainly that conversation about gun violence and where you would prioritize those dollars would be one heck of a lot different. And although I appreciate Vice Mayor, you're saying about so grateful about making progress and starting to pay more attention to it. My hope is that we continue to double down and triple down and whatever it takes to address the issue as if we were the person who lost a loved one and could make a difference. So I just wanted to lift that up and share that I understand the importance of, having a Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 plan and trying to stick to your plan and how that impacts your budget. But there are certain times where elements are thrust upon you, whether it be COVID or other circumstances in life. And certainly 70 plus homes being shot at should be an indicator that something that's majorly being thrust upon this community is gun violence, and we need to address it. And we need our budgetary priorities to reflect that prioritization. The other thing as well, I wanted to apologize for a comment that I said that might have been misconstrued last meeting. I made a comment about how so many times and so many years that we've been just slashing and cutting the budget, and how proud we should be able to be one of the few communities that actually gets to, dream and do things as well. But I also negated to reflect the fact that that's largely been from the blood, sweat, and tears and on the backs of so many hardworking city staff members who work tirelessly to make all that possible. And oftentimes it's come with still very lean staffing after retirements and whatnot to make all that possible. And although that we're accelerating that work, I don't want that to come at the expense of not recognizing and honoring the fact that there's a lot of hardworking men and women who work tirelessly and often a lot harder than they had to in previous years to make all that work possible. And so I wanted to make sure to lift that up, and also just kind of ask, city to continue to reflect on staffing levels. I know as we continue to grow all these initiatives and all these projects and great work with Imagine Kalamazoo and FFE aspirational funding to make sure that we're maintaining adequate staff levels to accomplish that work so we can maintain the best and brightest on our teams. So I wanted to make sure to lift that up as well. But with that, I again really appreciate everyone's work in putting together this budget, and again really appreciate the opportunity to work with my colleagues here tonight to hopefully put together another great year. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Prado. Commissioner Hess.
So staff, city staff and administration, this is indeed comprehensive and impressive work that you've laid out here tonight. And I, for one, have hope for this city in a time when the holiday season says that we should have some hope. I have a lot, given the recent work that you've done. I also have gratitude, amazing gratitude for what you've done and the over 600 employees of this city who work for us on a regular basis. And as it's been pointed out, gratitude to the Foundation for Excellence for the aspirational funding that we do have in this city. And we are very grateful to be living in this city. That said, I would like for us as a city to look forward with the idea of education at our core, that education simply isn't getting a diploma or a degree. that literally education means to draw forth. And by so many of our discussions here on commission and throughout this community, we are educators of one another. For example, not only are 3 major, amazing higher education institutions, but who are also engaged in this city. Kalamazoo Public Schools, the Kalamazoo Promise, our private high schools and elementaries and junior highs, Casey Ready Fours, the preschools, Literacy Kalamazoo, all of the religious education through all of the churches in this town, Isaac, Erase, TRHT, the community homeworks, Commissioner Pradle, teaching people how to be homeowners and how to care for homes. It is our passion. Education was mentioned a few times tonight. DCM Lamb saying that the block clubs are educational opportunities, that this is an educational campaign, and that gun violence itself is an idea of education of each other about what this is all about. Trauma is education. So I would like for us as a community to really embrace this idea of education and education for all, as MLK would say, education for all. So I look forward to spending the money next year. Thanks so much for all your work, city staff and administration.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Esteemed Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Anderson. Just be very brief. Thanking city staff, those that we see here today and those that we don't, for all of the work that you do all the time, especially with what's been put into this budget. Very much appreciated. I want to echo the comments and thank DCM Moore for her service. Even though we've got a little bit more time with you, thank you. Thank you for your service. And welcome Assistant Chief Green as well. I want to wish Aaron a happy birthday. And for the community at large, having a chance to just listen to what we've heard today, I want to encourage you all to please submit your comments, your questions, your feedback to each of us on the commission as we work through this. These are the times to make your voices heard. Let your thoughts be known on any of this. Again, we will have this will not be set in stone until January. So please make sure you do that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. I just want to say I appreciate everyone's comments tonight and your thinking. It's a pleasure to work together with this team. I want to remind everybody who's listening and all of us tonight to keep your hearts open. And I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.